Hello, and welcome to the podcast where friends discuss environmental policies from around the planet. Hello, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Planet Policy Pals. I'm feeling good. I'm no longer sick. Only thing that's got me down is my sports teams, but I'm not even going to get into it. I stay up when I have deadlines. I lose sleep to watch these teams. And yesterday, both Manchester United and the Niners decided to fuck with me. I just want to use this opportunity to say Ole out. Like, I'm on that bandwagon now. Fuck that guy. Shanahan, we're getting close to me being angry at you. You know what? That's enough of that. How are you?
Okay, I am so glad that you mentioned sports team because guess what happened yesterday? Oh my God, Pakistan won from India in a World Cup for the first time ever. Like, oh my God. And yeah, sorry, your Man U sucks, man. I'm sorry.
Shut
why do you
up.
lose sleep over that team? Saws, like, But yeah, anyway.
Guys, okay, for the people who watch cricket, I guess a lot of our listenership is in South Asia, so I'm not going to shit talk cricket right now. Please keep listening.
The lion, the witch, and the audacity of this bitch. Do not shit on cricket, okay?
Sure, but congrats to Pakistan. Moving on from sleepy baseball, hope you guys are all doing well out there in the world. One thing that we do want to talk about, well, I have very strong feelings about before we get into the audience question is Joe Manchin. Guys, this man, if your children are listening to this, why do you still listen to this podcast with kids? I mean, that's on you. But this nut stain on the fabric of democracy, this turd sack, if that is even a thing, is annoying the hell out of me. And so Joe Manchin, who is a representative in the state of West Virginia in America, holds shares in a company called EnerSystems. And they're a contractor for a local power plant that burns waste coal. Because Vice did this whole piece on him. And every time the reporters ask him for comments, he just refuses to answer. He made $492,000 in 2020 through private shares in this coal company. And the reason this annoys me so much is two reasons. One, that's like more than twice his senator salary, which is $174K, by the way. But I guess that's not enough for Joe Manchin. But also because this man is constantly blocking everything that Biden and the rest of the Democrats try to do when it comes to climate change and clean energy. And now we know why. It's because he's so invested in coal, but he gives all these bullshit reasons that don't make sense. But now we know why. The thing about this power plant is that when they burn coal, they release more sulfur dioxide and nitrous oxide per unit of energy than any other coal plants in the state of West Virginia. And this was calculated by the Sierra Club, so I believe them. And this man, like, he just...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's just living his life. Just being a... Ugh.
Okay, you are really getting yourself worked up about this. So this man who we have been hearing for months, mostly from me, from Allah, because she cannot get over him, he has been giving Biden shit about his pro-climate infrastructure bill, and the media just keeps calling it a critical vote, because that's what we call white old men's votes, right? And they're profiting insanely from the dirtiest energy source, which is obviously coal. And we'll come back to it more because the rest of the world is following suit, you guys. America is leading like they do in everything, good or bad. It's a real problem.
Yeah, it's a real problem. And that's why, like, when we were doing this Smog episode, I thought of him because the article came out like a week or 2 weeks ago, something like that. And he receives campaign donations from them too. But you know what? Whatever. Fuck Joe Manchin, guys. I said it. Let's move on to an audience question about a topic we're actually super into. So Masai asked, what do we think will be the biggest highlights of the upcoming COP26 holding from October 31st to November 12th? We're very excited, you guys. I mean, I'm not saying it's the Super Bowl of environmental policy, but you know, like, it's exciting.
I mean, we have weekly matches by Greta Thunberg doing that Fridays for Future thing. Might as well call this one.
Oh my God, Greta. So first off, the COP, which is the Conference of the Parties, is the supreme decision-making body of the UNFCCC. They need a better name. That's the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And a big thing for them is basically reviewing all the communications and the emission inventories that the parties submit. The parties are the countries. And then they assess measures that they need to take and the progress that is necessary. So by the time you guys hear this episode, I think that I know that COP26 will be on its way. Topics of focus that we are expecting, we want to see some strategies, and we know we'll see some strategies concerning meeting the current Paris Climate Agreement goals. And of course, some words will be said about the last assessment report that the IPCC put out. If you don't know about AR6 Working Group Part 1's report, please check out episode 25. The biggest thing out of all of this is reaching that net zero, although now the IPCC is saying we have to go past that, and making sure that the 1.5 degrees Celsius thing is still some sort of an option. If you don't know what that is,
again, watch our podcast episode where we explain this.
Yeah, we do. Episode 4, episode 25. We bring this up a lot, guys. We love the IPCC. And we also make fun of them, but we love them. But yeah, basically to avoid the most devastating impacts of climate change, the global community needs to limit human-caused warming to a 1.5 degrees or less. But guys, we might be seeing like 1.2, so I don't even know. We can't even reach 1.5. I don't know how we're going to get to 1.2. But we are pretty pumped to see what different countries propose. Second thing we're expecting is a lot of strategies in the energy sector. Because, speaking of coal and Joe motherfucking Manchin, coal is on the rise. In America, it's up to 22%. And honestly, I think it's just like the market is beating regulation as we have it right now. Because coal is super cheap and everything else is not right now. So we expect to hear a lot about this like transition to clean energy stuff. Adaptations, of course, are going to be a big thing too. Ajwa, what are some areas you think that we'll see some major adaptations?
I mean, I'm really hoping that we will see some adaptations that will actually bring about some change, although my hopes are not that high. But yeah, we really hope that they're going to talk about, of course, reducing emissions. That's their number one topic, blah, 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 as Greta Thunberg calls it. But we have devastating effects. So yeah, we hope to see talks on how to protect communities and natural habitats. And also we're going to have to see some of the richer countries doing some real spending. Like I've heard they're hoping up to like $100 billion is what they're expecting these countries to do. Right now, we know that there will be big changes that we're going to have to see to how people are living right now so that we can hit our climate targets.
Sure.
Like, people need to start driving electric cars and they need to move away from gas heating and eating less red meat,
Whoa.
and not taking as many flights in the future. But what really matters right now is what actions that they're going to take to reduce emissions and actually adapt and actually follow through with their promises. And while those actions can be committed to at COP, which they will be, there will be success or failure that we will determine much later. And we will see how these countries are actually going to put that into their own national policies around the world. So, fingers crossed, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, hopefully they put their money where their mouth is, because that $100 billion was a pledge that rich countries made. They made that pledge. And now, they're reaching their deadline. They're all freaking out. Of course, the US and the UK tried to spearhead the movement to destroy it and be like, no, we don't want to. But I guess like the head of the entire thing was like, no, I'm not even having that. Take several fucking seats, bitch. Like, no. So we'll see what they're going to do about that money. So getting into this week, we are talking about an event that took place in London in December of 1952 when there was a thick smog and it took over the city and it choked around 12,000 people to death, which is insane. But the good part, at least for once, guys, we're bringing you doom, gloom, but we're also bringing you a little like ring of happiness, silver lining, if you want to call it that. And this event actually gave birth to the world's first Clean Air Act. I'm a big fan of the fact that environmental policy did not used to be such a partisan political idea, Joe Manchin. And I like seeing examples of where everyone agrees, rightly, that major problems need major solutions. Because we're all using the fucking earth, guys. Anyway, this is Ajwa's story. So Ajwa, damn, I have sworn a lot in this first few minutes, guys. Super sorry. But you know what you signed up for. Ajwa, take it away.
No, yeah, it was actually a really crazy thing that happened. And no, Allah, you are wrong if you think that it was not a partisan political idea. It was 100% that. Churchill was not, you know what, I'm just going to explain the story and let you know what happened. But no, it was very much politicized, even as people were dying.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, of course, it was politicized, but we are now at a point in the world, at least then, eventually you could just like tell the crazy people, okay, shut up. People are dying. Like, we need to sort this out. You can't even do that anymore.
True, yeah. I think human life had more of a value back then than it does now. I mean, there weren't 7 billion of us.
Yeah. All environmentalists, we don't like Churchill.
I mean, as a South Asian, I don't like Churchill.
Yeah.
Just to give you guys a little background on the demographic and where London is. So Britain is generally a cold place, and it has been long affected by mist and fogs, but they became way more severe after the Industrial Revolution that happened in the late 1700s. Factories belch gases and huge numbers of particles into the atmosphere, which in themselves could be poisonous. The pollutants in the air, however, could also act as catalysts for fog, as water clings to the tiny particles, and that's how polluted fog, or what we call smog these days, is created.
So we know fog is basically low-lying clouds, water droplets. However, smog is chemically different, as you started to explain. What makes it that different, and why is it so dangerous?
So when some of the chemicals they mix with water and air, they can actually turn into acid, which can cause skin irritations, breathing problems, and it can even corrode buildings. So smog can easily be identified by its thick, foul-smelling, dirty yellow or brown characteristics. So it's totally different to the clear white fog that you would see around in country areas. But let's not forget that there have been dense fog incidents in the past, right? So this was not something new. There are reports of thick smog that was smelling of coal tar in the winter of 1813. And it lasted for several days. Now, people claim that you could not see from one side of the street to the other. Then another similar fog happened in December in 1873, which actually saw the death rate across London rise above 40%.
Wow.
Yeah. And these marked increases in death rates also occurred after the notable fogs happened of January 1880 and February 1882. And then again in December 1891, December 1892, and November 1948.
I just gotta say, these people were dealing with this for a while. And they were just like, And then I guess it got real bad.
Yeah, like I feel like if this one hadn't happened in 1950s, when there were already conversations around the air and pollution, it would just be like another one of the fogs that they've seen. Mm-hmm. Now, the worst affected area of London was usually the East End, where the density of factories and homes was also greater than almost anywhere else in the capital. And this area was usually also like a low-lying area, so it made it really hard for fog to disperse.
Oh, of course, yeah.
As you know, that smog was a very frequent part of London life, but it was nothing quite compared to what happened on Friday, the 5th of December to Tuesday, the 9th of December in 1952. The Met Office, literally on their website, they say, yeah, while it heavily affected the population of London, causing a huge death toll and inconveniencing millions of people, the people it affected were also partly to blame for the smog. And they're not wrong.
Wow.
It's terrible policies, to be fair, but at the end of the day, people were to blame.
That's kind of crazy. At first, I was going to be like, victim blaming, no. But what you're telling me is the victims were also kind of causing it?
So in the early days of the winter of 1952, there was like a great mass of cold air that had moved off the English Channel. It draped itself over London like an icy comforter, and it just like stayed there. It did not move. So of course, now there's extra cold and Londoners wanted to keep warm. So what did they do? They piled extra coal into their fireplaces. And you know what happens when you burn coal, right? Like it sends plumes of black, sooty smoke into the air. And then that mixed with the exhaust from factories and the coal-burning power plants. Now, this, you see what's happening, right? Like this is all like a fuck show.
Right.
And that was their source of domestic heating. So which is why the Met Office isn't entirely wrong, but the smoke, instead of rising into the atmosphere and dispersing, it stayed close to the ground, which trapped the cold air above. So, the people didn't have another method of heating, another source of heating. So I think that's bad on the policymakers' part, and putting the blame on the people just because they're dying of cold and they just want to heat themselves up is a little unfair. I think they needed better policies.
I agree.
Maybe Joe Manchin can hear this.
Guys, we're going to be roasting Joe Manchin for a while. I feel strongly about this one. But anyway, you know what this whole thing reminds me of? When we were in undergrad together, Dr. Son, who could never say my name, even when she read it off a piece of paper. If she ever hears this, shout out Dr. Son, I still love you. In her environmental class, she loved air quality, so most of her examples were about that. And I remember her explaining how temperature inversions make smog so awful once it gets started. And I feel like that's what's going on over here. So you want to give us a short lesson on that? Do your own Dr. Son bit?
I can never do justice to Dr. Son, but yes, of course, like, so under normal conditions, we would have like smoke that would rise into the atmosphere and just disperse, right? But there was an anticyclone that was hanging over the region. Now, what is an anticyclone, you ask? It is a weather phenomenon that is defined as a large-scale circulation of winds around a central region of high atmospheric pressure, and it's usually in the clockwise direction in the northern hemisphere. So what this does is it pushes air downwards and warming it as it descends. So this creates an inversion where air close to the ground is cooler than the air above it. So when the warm smoke comes out of the chimney, it is trapped. This is the inversion of 1952 that trapped particles and gases emitted from factory chimneys in the London area and the pollution which the winds from the east had brought from industrial areas on the continent. So it was like nothing was going according to how it was supposed to go.
No, for real.
On the day of, though, like, it was a clear sky. It was really cold for the whole week, but it was very clear. People didn't think much of it. They just put their coal in their fireplaces and they went to their businesses to go do. It was just business as usual, right?
Sure.
Then as the day is progressing, there's like a veil of fog, which is, again, not unusual in the city that is very famous for its cool, misty weather. Now, it started to enshroud all the big city landmarks like the Big Ben, the St. Paul's Cathedral, the London Bridge. Now, within a few hours, this fog is turning into a sickly shade of yellow-brown.
Yellow-brown? Why does smog turn yellow? Is it like a refractory light thing? Pollutants? What's up with that?
So we know, like, the water droplets in the fog, they mix with emissions from coal burning, right? So we have sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, along with some nitrogen that gives this yellow-brownish color. Right now, we had this thousands of tons that is being pumped into the air by London's factory smokestacks, chimneys, and automobiles. And on top of that, there's smoky diesel fuel buses that had recently replaced, by the way, the city's electric tram system, which added to the toxic brew.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, of course, it was a natural disaster, but it was made worse. Now, why? And that's because the British were burning a very low grade of coal, and it was called the nutty slack.
Nutsack.
That's how shitty it was. Now, that was because there were difficult economic conditions after the World War that led the government to export the best and the cleanest coal. But the Churchill government, of course, they wanted to lift the coal ration, so they made large quantities of this very low quality and dirty coal, and it was available to the public. So that's what they were burning in their homes. But, of course, they didn't think anything is out of the ordinary. Londoners are still living the day. They're like, oh, it's okay. They're just trying to ignore the foul air as much as possible. But now, within a day, overnight, it has become impossible to ignore this crisis, right? Now the fog has become the London smog.
Oh, I see.
So on the first day, they just called it a pea super because it was really not a big thing. But it quickly thickened into a poisonous stew that they had not seen before, right?
Right.
Now the noxious 30-mile wide air mass that is teeming with these acrid sulfur particles, and it smelled like rotten eggs. And it was getting worse every day. It was so dense that residents in some sections of the city were unable to see their feet as they walked. For 5 days, the Great Smog paralyzed London, and it crippled all forms of transportation except for the London Underground train system.
Wait, that is awful. You can't see your feet, you can't see in front of you. And this is the 50s. This is not the 18 whatevers. People had to go out and work. This was after they were recovering from a world war.
Yeah. So, of course, poor visibility. There's no boat traffic even on the Thames. The flights and trains, they're cancelled. And even during the middle of the day, the drivers, they turn on their headlights and they hang their heads out of their car windows to actually see through. There was like a lot of looting and burglaries and like a lot of other kind of emboldened criminals. They just completely came out. They only had to walk like 3 feet before you could not see them.
True.
It was super easy.
Great time for crime.
But what's funny is that even through all of this, when all of this is happening, people can't see anything. There's wheezing pedestrians that are just around the city's neighborhood. They're trying not to actually slip because the sidewalks were coated with this greasy black ooze.
Ew.
But nobody thought it was a really big deal. There was no sense of drama or emergency.
My goodness.
So this doctor who worked at this hospital in London, Dr. David Bates, he said that it was only when the Registrar General, they published their mortality figures 3 weeks later that everybody realized that there had, in fact, been a major disaster.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. That is hilarious. It's not hilarious. I'm sorry people died, but okay. This is the thing that always throws me about stuff like this. So I have like 3 questions. This is a 3-parter. Let's say you survive. At the very least, wouldn't people be coughing and uncomfortable? How did they not connect the dots? Like, I wasn't wheezing and unable to breathe before that insane event. And also, what finally made them get it? Like, okay, yeah, dude, this is serious.
Okay, so there was a lot of public pressure to deal with the issue, but the government's reaction was like very slow because they were very adamant. They're like, oh, it's just a natural disaster. What can we do about it? Initially, it even claimed that the December's high mortality rate was due to a flu outbreak. And it wasn't until 7 months later when it eventually ordered an inquiry. So they were really, and they were treating it like, oh, it's just like something out of... They were treating it as not a big deal, right? It was lethal, particularly for the elderly and the young children, and also people with respiratory problems. And when there's a respiratory problem, smokers also suffer because of their already impaired lungs. And smoking was quite common at the time, especially among men. So people were quite uncomfortable. Hospitals are piling up, just nobody wants to connect the dots. Wow. And it wasn't until undertakers when they started to run out of coffins and florists out of bouquets.
Oh my goodness.
That they really noticed the deadly impact of the Great Smog. Like deaths from bronchitis and pneumonia increased more than 7-fold, which are, of course, both respiratory issues. So, and like I said, the East End, which gets the worst of the smog in London, their death rate increased 9-fold.
That is not great. Those numbers are very depressing.
Yeah, and they still didn't care. Like, they were still having races in Oxford and Cambridge, and they just had like somebody called a track marshal who just stood there and said, oh, this way, this way. So, they try to just like go around the issue instead of actually addressing it.
So what you're telling me is these people were just out there running. First of all, you could not get me to run unless my life was in danger, even in clean air. Smog, that's it. I'm tapping out of the race. I'm going home. It seems like people were more concerned with what they could see and not health issues at first. I guess the 50s just don't seem that ancient to me, where people would have been like, what is this thing? You've said already that there were people talking about it. Was air quality not that much of a topic yet?
So you'll be surprised, actually. In 1661, now that's the 17th century, John Evelyn presented this treatise to King Charles II, in which he suggested that smoke pollution is not only visibly objectionable, but actually would shorten the lives of people living in London. He argued that the constant presence of this coal smoke in London, it really offends her and like darkens all, eclipses all her other attributes. Of course, nobody took him seriously.
What? I'd be like, oh, it offends her? Okay, thanks, guy. Look at us giving you guys a history lesson. You're welcome.
Yeah. But then one of the earliest environmental laws that we saw was in Britain in 1863, which was the Alkali Act that was started to restrict some industrial pollution. So they also began improving water quality in some rivers during the mid-19th century. However, this urban and industrial pollution, it remained a constant problem in European and North American cities throughout to the mid-20th century. And that was because reformers just really couldn't convince government or the general public that damage from coal smoke actually outweighed the jobs and the warmth that this hydrocarbon provided.
So what you're telling me is that not much has changed?
So they did have some success with these large-scale industries, gas plants, and electric generators by mandating tall chimneys and scrubbers so that they could remove some of the pollution, and efficient furnaces that reduce the amount of soot that is carried out by the smoke. But there was no simple solution for the other major sources of air pollution, right? The millions of fires that used to heat homes across Greater London. And these fires were less efficient and generally relied on much shorter chimneys to actually carry the smoke away. So now, while gas and electric companies promoted the clean aspects of their cooking and heating appliances from at least the 1880s, most Londoners, they actually remained pretty attached to their open hearth coal fires. And these fires were seen as healthy because they provided better circulation of air through homes.
Interesting.
Yeah. So after 5 days of living in this sulfurous hell, the Great Smog finally lifted on December 9th when there was this brisk wind that came in from the west and it swept the toxic cloud away from London and out to the North Sea.
It's so interesting, right? Because we're literally talking about a time when people are saying there is a problem, it's a health issue, it's a crisis. And even today, after climate change, which we know is the biggest threat to humanity right now, don't argue with me, please. It is. This is not my opinion, it's just fact. Air pollution is next, right after that.
Yeah.
It still is.
And we've seen conversations happen about it from a very long time. It's just nobody wants to give it up. And we're coming back to it again. Whenever it becomes convenient, we come back to it because we really don't care. It's about punching that money.
Money, money, money. But yeah, so how did this affect people's lives?
Well, what do you think, Ala? So, initial reports that came out, they estimated that about 4,000 people died prematurely in the immediate aftermath of the smog.
That's horrible.
Right, but these detrimental effects, they lingered, and the death rates remained well above normal, even going into the summer of the next year. Many experts now estimate that the Great Smog claimed at least 8,000 lives, and there's a new study that says as many as 12,000 people were killed.
That's horrific.
Yeah. They had health effects not in the short term, but also they were very long lasting, with a recent study that revealed that increased likelihood of childhood asthma development for those that were exposed to the Great Smog, even if they were in utero or during their first year of life. So these results actually are the first link that they've come out with that suggests that early life pollution exposure to later development of asthma is a real thing, and they used a natural experiment suggesting that the legacy of the Great Smog is still going. What's really funny is that you don't really hear about it much, right? Like,
yeah,
it's not in their history books. They just don't want to talk about it for some reason.
I mean, we know about it because of Dr. Son, second shout out. But yeah, it's not something that comes up a lot outside, I guess, environmental spaces.
Yeah, also I think Churchill was really good at hiding his flaws from the books. I mean, he was a man of the books. If there's one thing we can give him credit for.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe he really knew how to write that fucking shit down. The reason I'm giving so much shit to Churchill is because coal combustion was probably the main factor in these deaths, right? Like, that's what the researchers said.
Sure.
But a close examination that they did of the victim's lung tissue, it indicated that Londoners were exposed not just to high volumes of ultrafine carbon materials, but also more than a dozen other fine particulate substances. And it includes metals like lead.
Ew. No, but London is actually one of the cities that's not super clean for air. Till today.
Yeah, it's still not. So according to the experts, the reason why London is high in number, well, not experts, politicians, they say that the reason it is so is because London or England has one of the best air monitoring systems, right? Like, if not one of the best in the world, which is true. Their air monitoring system is really amazing. So what they're saying is that it's not that our air is really clean. They're like, we get it, our air is really dirty, but that's the case with most big cities. It's just they don't have that good of an air monitoring system like we do. If you do, you will find that a lot of other big cities are facing the same problems. Yes, we should address it, but let's not point all the fingers to London.
You know what? I actually have a great response to this because earlier this year I had to review this ginormous paper that talked about air pollution in various big cities, and London was on there. And it's true, they have more air monitoring stations than some of the cities on there. But as far as like developed nations go, even with the other countries that have as much air monitoring situations, London, LA, Beijing, and I think it was Sao Paulo, do have some of the worst air that you can be breathing in a city. I'm sorry, they do not get a pass.
I mean, I don't believe them, right? Like, even then, do something about it. Oh,
Right.
look, the others are doing it, so it's fine. If all others jump into a bridge, would you?
Right off the London Bridge.
So it didn't just affect people, it also affected animals, right? So there were birds that lost in the fog that crashed into buildings. It was really sad. There were also cattle that had apparently choked to death. And breeders, they fashioned improvised gas masks for their cattle by soaking these grain stalks in whiskey so that they could keep their cattle alive. Yeah. Listen, girl,
Okay.
50s, okay?
I love whiskey as much as the next guy, but I'm not giving it to cows. So,
Yeah, well, it was that, or their cattle would literally choke to death.
oh my God.
So, when coal, oil, and the derivatives are burned, their products of combustion carry a variety of pollutants into the atmosphere. Some of the ash of the coal is ejected, particularly from these industrial plants, as grit, which is normally deposited fairly quickly in the neighborhood of its source.
Not to mention the climate implications of this as well. I mean, I know they weren't thinking about it too much, but still an issue. So I know you're going to talk about how much this event changed environmental history, and you've already given us some examples in the 1800s of similar fogs. But where else was dealing with this kind of fog situation during or before this time? Is this the worst ever?
While it is considered a turning point in environmental history, there have been other episodes, right, where air pollution was held responsible for a spike in deaths. Like, one of the most notable ones is the Moose Valley in Belgium that happened in 1930. It's sad because the numbers in London were higher than those of Denora or even the one in Belgium.
And it's so crazy because Denora, Pennsylvania is very popular, more popular than the smog thing.
Exactly. It is more popular than the smog thing. Nobody even knows where the fuck Denora is. Everybody knows where London is. A lot of people died in London. They're just really good. I mean, come on. If there's one thing the British know how to do is rewrite our history books.
Okay, PR on 100.
I'm just saying. Anyway, so following this great smog, obviously, when they finally took notice, there was a committee that was set up, and it was chaired by Sir Hugh Beaver. And he identified the source of the smog as pollution from solid fuels. Now, the committee then made a number of recommendations that formed the basis of the Clean Air Act 1956, which introduced a number of measures that they could take to reduce air pollution. Now, this is a Clean Air Act that we were talking about earlier, which is one of the first of its kind in the world, because it just had legislators coming down to the table and talking about it and just coming up with an actual policy solution. Now, this act gave local authorities the power to control emissions of smoke, grit, dust, and fumes from industrial premises and furnaces. Then they also set up smoke control zones. Now, in these smoke control zones, emissions of any of these materials could be banned. Also, furnaces could no longer emit this dark smoke, and households were offered grants towards the cost of converting whatever their coal burning grates they had so that they could have smokeless fuel. There was also a broad consensus that believed that the legislation actually had a major impact on improving public health, because of course it affects public health. It's interesting because following the legislation, the 8 specific death rates of men in Greater London, they fell by almost half. So we know that air pollution is what was causing it, but there's still new pollution threats that are causing concern, as air pollution mortality figures pretty much remain the same. It's funny. Nitrogen dioxide levels are particularly concerning, and London has one of the highest measured level of the gas, and it has breached EU safety limits every year for the last 5. Like in 2015, NO2 levels on Oxford Street broke the annual limit in just 4 days. They were not waiting. But here's the drama. The London's Deputy Mayor for Environment and Energy, Matthew Penshars, he says that, of course, because they need somebody else to blame, because it's not their fault, he said that there wouldn't be a problem if EU emission testing could actually be relied upon. He says the vehicles are often up to 10 times more polluting on the road than they are on the test cycle. And if the vehicles had all performed the way that we've been promised by the EU, we would be within the NO2 limit values around now.
Is this some kind of like political blaming thing, or like, so Brexit dramas, that's what we're getting from him? Just passing the buck?
I mean, it's both, right? So we all know what happened with the Volkswagen incident, right? How they scammed the entire world, really, into believing that they didn't have as many emissions on their cars as much as they did. I think these people really just use that as a stepping stone to shit on EU, because there was this one really big scandalous event around the vehicle emission testing system.
Fair enough.
So, like I said, their mortality rates are pretty much similar, right? Like, there was a recent study that suggested that pollution in the capital claims as many as 9,500 lives a year. And there's also a growing number of scientists, politicians, and campaigners that believe that on the eve of the Clean Air Act's 60th anniversary, it has been 60 years, guys, the UK must once again invoke its pioneering spirit.
Invoke part of its pioneering spirit?
Yeah, we don't want the Britain to invoke anything from history. Like, we done, bro. We done with you.
We're good.
Oh, we good. But the environmental organization Climate Earth lawyer, Alan Andrews, he said that London is thought to have the highest levels of nitrogen dioxide of any city in the EU. And with levels with some of the London's busiest roads, such as Brixton and Putney High Street, currently more than triple the legal limits.
That is insane. Honestly, I cannot wait to see what England, Britain, UK, whatever, is going to talk about COP26, because air quality is going to be a big issue on the docket. And I would like to see what their adaptations and ideas are.
I mean, Boris is really excited about the environment. I mean, I don't like the guy, but the way that he talks about the environment is good. Even in the General Assembly recently, I think he spoke about the environment. And you know, I'm all for it. I really hope that they do something, because London apparently will have illegal levels of air pollution until 2025. So, Mr. Johnson might want to get on that.
Get on it, sir. Well, this was an interesting story. We enjoyed talking about this one. I guess we've added Churchill and Joe Manchin to our list. Guys, one day we'll do an episode that just covers all the people that are on our list that we hate. Ted Cruz, Shell, Joe Manchin, all of them. So, you guys, question for you. What is your favorite air quality act or legislation? I like to remind everyone how Judge Bush Sr. amended the U.S. Clean Air Act significantly in 1972, because it's my best example of how environmental policy is not a partisan thing. I know we make it a partisan thing, but it shouldn't be. So tell us what yours are. This week, instead of sharing an organization, I'm going to recommend another podcast. It's really short. Free plug. The World Resource Institute has been doing a short series on COP26, and they just did an episode on what we can expect regarding air quality and why it is a key topic. It's like 6 minutes long, and we get to hear from Jessica Seddon. I hope I said her name right, because I think she's really awesome. She's a global lead on air quality at WRI Ross Center for Sustainable Cities. So please check the show notes. There'll be a link to that very episode. I found it to be a very enlightening conversation, and it's way shorter than anything you'll ever get from us, apart from a trailer. So there's that. And that is our show. Next week, we will dive into yet another engineering process fail. You guys know we love those, because never forget, our background is in chemical engineering, guys. We got to use our degrees. Look at us, Dr. Brenner. Ha ha ha. Seriously, this is one that also has a lot of technical mistakes, and we're looking forward to learning more about the communities in Italy and how they survived these leaks from dioxin. Check out our website, planetpolicypals.com, for updates and show notes, as well as references on everything we talked about today. Email us, leave a voicemail, rate and review us. If you have any cool trivia about anything we talked about today, about smog in your own city, question about COP26, ideas, please let us know. We want to hear them. We love you guys. You guys are our fellow environmental nerds. We love you guys. Follow us on Twitter at Planet Policy Pal, Instagram at Planet Policy Pals, and like our Facebook page. Check out our YouTube page if you need captions as you listen. Stay safe. Stay warm as it's starting to cool down. God, please let it cool down. down. Until next time, guys. Keep learning, pals.